Today's class is super important. It is about the Daily Navigator, which is at the very core of kind of the immersion program that we are offering you here at Flow Academy. The idea is, if you didn't get a chance to go back and look at Daily Navigator 1, is that it is an accountability program that helps you be held accountable within an accountability group on a daily basis, or at least for the days that you want to be held accountable. And the reason I say that is that when we go through this class, it might feel a little overwhelming when we start outlining for you what the Daily Navigator is. It's gonna feel like a lot, or it might feel like a lot. What's really important to note, and I will say this again towards maybe in the middle of class and maybe again at the end, is what you're going to see today is kind of the end result of where we want you to be eventually with the Daily Navigator, not where you will start, not necessarily where you will start. If you're super aggressive and you want to try that, you're welcome to. But really, this is where we're showing you where we want you to kind of end up. And the big thing is that we want to, the whole idea of the Daily Navigator is to have a purposeful existence within your business and within your personal life. And what I mean by that is, the idea of the Daily Navigator is that you set out in the morning. These are the things that I intend to do. This morning, Nicole and Kevin and I all created our Daily Navigator for today. We sent it to each other and our other accountability groups. And we said, here's the things that we're going to do today. And during the day, we're going to do those things. And that's going to be our guide for what's our priorities for the day. And at the end of the day, as we get all those things done, we're going to scratch them all off. We're going to write our gratitude list. We're going to write down what we learned or struggled with or whatever, like a mini journal. And we're going to send it back out to each other and say, yay, I did it. And I feel great, or I struggled, or whatever it is. And so that's the short version of what the Daily Navigator is. And what today's class is about is helping you create your own Daily Navigator, not only one that you're going to start using now, but one that you will use eventually. Remember, it's a fluid document. It's something that is changing constantly. The Daily Navigator that I have now, and that Nikki has, and that Kevin has, they've all evolved, and yours will evolve as well. Okay, so today we're going to help you create your own Daily Navigator. We're going to help you target your first accountability group, and we're going to teach you how to get the most out of your Daily Navigator. The Daily Navigator is broken down into basically 4 particular areas. Nikki, we have this on the knowledge library, right? A version of them to be able to create their own, or remind me, I can't remember.
That's actually a Kevin question. I think it's there, but I will put it in the chat as well.
It is there. Yep, it is there. Okay,
so there's a template there for you to create your own. Again, I'm going to say this multiple times, but what you see here is not your Daily Navigator. This happens to be mine, but it's just an example. And what I mean by that is the items that are in here, you're going to tweak and change a little bit. You can certainly copy some of these things, but they're maybe not be the same for you. But at the beginning of the Daily Navigator, it talks about the commitments that I'll make to myself, my accountability partners that I will complete today with the urgency that I would show, as if my life depends on it. Now, I know that sounds dramatic, but the idea is that sometimes the urgency that we put on our own task is kind of fleeting, and we're easily dismissed in terms of the things that we intend to do during the day, and then something happens, we get distracted, or our mood changes, or we start making excuses, or we find some resistance, and we just don't do it. And so the life depends on it part is intended to be dramatic, but it's also kind of serious about, like, hey, this is a must-do list. This is not a to-do list. These are the things that I decided, nobody else, that I must do today. So here's the 4 different categories. The first one is in the personal side, and I have mine listed as between 5 p.m. and 9 a.m. And the idea of that is that ultimately we want to get you to the point where most of your business is happening during a regular business time, and your personal stuff is your personal stuff. It's not always going to be that way entirely, but that's what we're working towards. And that's basically how most of my business is. Rarely do I work on evenings and weekends. If I do, it's by appointment. And we'll get into that later. But on the personal side, here's what I've got for mine. Drink my greens, meditation and affirmations, spiritual and self-improvement reading, and exercise. Now, this has changed a little bit over different periods of my life. At some point, I was kind of working on writing a book. If you came early to class, you heard Kevin referencing that. So at one point, it said on there, write a couple pages in my book, and so forth. But this is the personal stuff here that I get to decide every day which one of these or all of them do I want to do. So just because they're on my list does not mean that I'm actually doing those things every single day. And we'll get into that in a little bit. The next one is all of the business stuff. This is all stuff that is leading me down the path of having a consistent revenue stream in my business, mainly focused on lead generation, right? Ultimately, again, we're trying to get you to the point where you're doing really three things. You're generating business, that's relationships, and lead gen and all that. Number two is that you are in charge of all negotiating all the deals, right? Whether that's on the buyer side or the seller side and everything in between. And the third thing is managing your team, whether that's outsourced team, whether that's a virtual assistant or an actual assistant, buyer's agents, whatever we're doing, that's what we're getting you. That's what we want you to be going towards. These items here are towards the lead gen place. And so you can see on mine, it has meet with X amount of people. All these blanks in here are to quantify what I intend to do that day. So it's important that we're quantifying as much as possible. So I'm going to write down, I'm going to meet with 2 people a day. I'm going to touch 10 people. I'm going to ask 4 questions. If you don't know what that is, we'll talk about that later, but that's the purposeful communication with people. I'm going to do that X amount of times and so forth. Down here towards the bottom is our gratitude and our kind of mini journal. One thing that's important, that we feel like is important, is to be as much as possible living in a state of gratitude. It's so easy to get down on things, to feel sorry for yourself, to get frustrated or whatever, but it's really hard to have that and feel grateful at the same time. And so, as you know, this is not our idea at all. Many places, many kind of gurus and everything are constantly trying to get us into that state of looking for where we can be grateful. And so we're purposeful about that here on the Daily Navigator, writing down 3 things that maybe you take for granted or things that you just want to acknowledge in your own mind. Gosh, I'm really grateful that I have clean drinking water, or a roof over my head. I mean, even the simplest things, a car that works or whatever. And then what did I observe, learn, relearn? What did I struggle with? What great idea did I have today? It's like a mini journal to write down, not only for yourself, but also for your accountability group. And the accountability group is the last part. And we'll get into that in a little bit more. So personal development includes life skills, physical, mental, spiritual, and educational stuff, right? What are the behaviors that I want to add in my life to make sure that I do them more often? And I want you to, if you have a pen, take a minute to write these things down. I'm going to give you a couple ideas as you write this down or write it on your computer or whatever. But the list, again, can be something similar to mine or Kevin's.
No, I set my alarm earlier.
Oh, Gabe, hey.
Nope.
Hey, Gabriel. Thanks, bud. And I'm glad Gabe set his alarm so that we were here and we got a pretty good attendance here on this class. So what I want you to be thinking about here is, what are the things that if I do them on a regular basis, that it will have over a period of time a positive impact on my life. And so one of the things that was frustrating for me, and part of where this Daily Navigator came from, was I knew what the right actions that I wanted to take were. I knew the things that I thought, man, if I did that on a regular basis, that would really make an impact on my life. And for me, the early things on those were like certainly meditation, prayer, and reading spiritual or self-improvement kind of material. And however, just knowing that wasn't enough to get me to do it on a regular basis. And so that's kind of what this whole Daily Navigator is all about, is what are the things that I want to do on a daily basis? Maybe it's spending more time with my kids. Maybe it's spending quiet time in a park, right? It doesn't have to be my stuff, but the idea is that you're purposeful about it. Volunteering is another one that it's one of those things that just kind of slips through the cracks unless you're purposeful about it. Maybe you want to write a book as well, or learn an instrument. That was on mine for a little while, was practice guitar. I was taking guitar lessons with my son. So now let's move on to business development. Now, what you're going to see in here, if you've done any coaching at all, if you've read any books, Ninja or whatever it is, you're gonna see a lot of overlap here on actionable items that we all should be doing in our business on a regular basis. So again, we're not recreating the wheel here. All we're doing is putting it down on paper. So meeting with people face to face, touching people, as in not just a phone call. It can be a text. It can be email, but there needs to be meaningful interaction back and forth, right? So it doesn't have to be a phone call, though to me, phone calls are still the best. And then within the context of that, having the forward questions, we have a whole class on forward, but that's being purposeful about your communication with them and being curious through the four, basic topics: family, occupation, recreation, dreams. And we'll get into that later. But again, being purposeful about how many times you're going to make sure that happens on a daily basis. Personal cards, and I think I should get ahead of my slides here. Personal note cards, I think we have down in here. I'm going to back up here because I kind of skipped ahead of my slides. So on the face-to-face meetings, that could be a break bread, that could be a Zoom, that could be a pop by. It could be even chance meetings by purpose. So like, for example, maybe go hang out at the Starbucks where, in your town, where that, or it's likely that some of your friends are going to pop in and you're going to have a chance to say hello to them. And then of course, more purposeful things like events, client events, or any networking events, all of that stuff, that all counts as face-to-face meetings. Touches, as I said, text, email, phone, but it does need to be meaningful communication. Here's forward, as we discussed already. Now, personal notes, this is kind of a lost art that people love. So if you are not currently writing personal notes to people, whether it's thank you cards for having a chance to get together with them, or doing business with you, or sending you a referral, or anniversary cards, just because notes, hey, I was just thinking about you, birthday cards and so forth, people love a personal handwritten note. And so we want to be purposeful about making sure that we get those out there. Now, video content is obviously a very big thing. This is certainly a buzzword. Many of you are doing it, and many of you are like, I can't do it, or I don't want to do it. We will help you with video content at some point, but it is important to get that out there because people, this is how they're, getting information and what's making them attracted to you. Same thing with social media. We'll have a class eventually about what to post, what not to post, how to be effective, how often there should be business versus personal, and so forth. And then writing everything down in the weekly Navigator, which we're going to talk about later here in the class, but this is a way to keep track of the things that you do on a daily basis. Now, on the should do list, these are things that you may have that are important, but not necessarily urgent, but they need to get done. So, and again, this is more about being purposeful about the things that are, so maybe it's a clean up a pile of stuff on your desk, or for me yesterday, it was take the Christmas tree down. It doesn't have to be necessarily about business, but it's about things that you want to make sure get done. And the reason you're putting it on your should do list is that if you do it there, now it's on your must do list. Now everybody knows that you said you're going to get it done. And so you got to get it done. And then, so we've talked a little bit about gratitude and observations, but this is an important part of the form every single day. And typically I do this at the end of the day. I'll do my gratitude at the end of the day. I will certainly do what I learned at the end of the day. Some people do their gratitude in the morning when they make their whole list and they write down what they're grateful for. Of course, either way, it's totally fine to do that. And so let's talk a little bit about your accountability partners. Now, because you're in Flow Academy, we're going to divide you into small accountability groups. And that's going to be your peers to, within your accountability group. And a peer is one of three kind of people that we want to have in your accountability group. So a peer is obviously somebody that's on the same path as you. You guys are trying to do the same things. It doesn't have to be even somebody in real estate, but ideally it is. But it could be just a good friend that you want to, do this program with, or that you want them to be aware of what you're doing. But you also want to have in here eventually a mentor. So that could be a coach, it could be a manager, it could be another agent that you look up to that you've asked, hey, I'd really like to be more, I like the way you do business. Would you mentor me? And it doesn't have to be even somebody in real estate. It could just be a business person, or it could be a spiritual person, or whatever. Somebody that you look up to that you're looking for guidance, but you want to have at least one of them ultimately in your accountability group. And then the other one is you want to have a mentee. You want to have somebody that you are being the guide to, that you are being the example for. And you'd be surprised at how important this person is when it comes to you getting the things done and you being a own good example to yourself. Okay, so that's what the three types of people that make up the accountability group is. Like I said, we're gonna start you off with a little one within Flow Academy, but we want to be building towards these three things. So excuse me. So take a minute to consider who those people might be in your life, people that you look up to, other peers that that might want to do this accountability group with you. By the way, none of them, they don't have to do the daily navigator. All you're looking for them is to receive your daily navigator. And in the context of that, you don't have to, all they're doing is receiving it and maybe acknowledging it. This is like your private audience, your fan club. These are people that are rooting for you. And they might be people that you want to make sure that they know how hard you're working. Like it could be a significant other or spouse. It could be your kids that you want to have on your accountability group. You don't have to decide this right now, but think about these kinds of people who, you would want to be sending this list out on a daily basis. So these are the people that should be making up your first accountability group. Again, something you can work on later, but I want you to be kind of thinking that direction. And when you've decided you want these people to be on your group, have a conversation with them. Let them know what it is. We can coach you through that a little bit, but again, it's not really that big of a deal. They don't need to do it with you. And then, send them a thanks for being part of your accountability group when you do establish that group. All right, so let's talk about the weekly navigator. We could do an entire class on this. We're not going to. I don't think we need to. And this is something that would be that you could bring the questions that are going to come from this to our live coach on Thursdays. But the weekly navigator is a way to keep track of what you're getting done through the week. That was first outlined in your daily navigator. And we've broken down the days of the week. And actually, we need to switch out the sheet because it doesn't have the categories on it. But on Mondays, for me, for example, I do Monday check-ins. And so every Monday, the theme of Monday is to check in with all of my current clients. So that's active buyers, active sellers, current listings that are in contract, buyers that are in contract, and so forth. And every Monday, they're going to get a call. And so that helps me start filling up this sheet of how 10 a day is what I personally shoot for. Kevin does the same thing. Again, and I said this at the beginning of the class, you should not necessarily be starting at this point. You may already be feeling overwhelmed with the stuff that we're talking about. And that's okay. We're going to start you off with baby steps, but ultimately we're shooting to get you ramped up to about 10 conversations a day and 2 to 3 face-to-faces a day and 2 personal notes a day. And that's kind of what's outlined on this. And so that's Mondays. On Tuesdays are my VIP days. Ideally, and tomorrow's our database class. We're going to talk about the ideal database, and eventually we'll talk about VIPs as well. But you want to have about 50 VIPs. These are people that love you, that love your business, that are your advocate. You love them. You love hanging out with them. And you want to make sure that they're getting a little more attention than just your regular database. And so on Tuesdays, my database is broken down into about 12 VIPs a week. And so Each week, there's a different VIP list that gets called. But at the end of the month, all of my VIPs have been called at least once a month. So that's Tuesdays. Wednesdays, we break those down into old leads and new leads. So as you accumulate leads, this is the great day to follow up with the people that you've talked to in the past and that you've accumulated during the week as you've done all of your phone calls. Thursdays is letter of the week. And letter of the week, we talked about this in some other classes, but it's not a letter that you write out. It's the letter of the alphabet matched up to the week of the year. So the first week of January, the letter is A, and all of the everybody in your database that has an A that starts with their last name starts with an A, they get a call that week. The following week is B, and so forth. There's 52 weeks in the year. There's 26 letters in the alphabet, so everybody gets a call twice a week. Now, it doesn't always work out exactly that way, and of course, there's letters that hardly have any names in them, and there's going to be weeks that you don't call at all. But the idea is that everybody in your database at least twice a year is getting a personal phone call from you, in addition to all the other things that we do. And then Friday is business development, and we'll talk more about that later. But it's reaching out to people that would maybe lead into your VIP list or other database and so forth. So how do you fill it out? It's each day you fill it out. So you'll see a column on Monday, like yesterday when I set mine out, my Monday column was all filled up with names to the degree that it got filled out. And it does correlate with your daily navigator. And the idea is, like on the touches, there's say 50 boxes there. You don't get to have the same name twice in there. The idea is we're talking to 50 different people a week. And then that also gets sent out to your accountability group. At the bottom, there's a lead tracker on there. And the reason there's a lead tracker is that if you're anything like me, you might get a lead. Who knows where it comes from? You don't pay attention to it. You think, oh, maybe they'll call me back, or what. I don't know what kind of cockamamie ideas I had. But basically, I really needed to get in the habit of writing down where these leads were and where they came from. I think the illusion that I had was I had such a great call with them. I'm sure they'll call me back. And then I would never hear from them again, or I wouldn't follow up with them. And people don't necessarily work like that. So we want to be purposeful about who they are, where they came from, what is it that I'm going to do with the lead, and how am I going to make sure that all these items follow up. And so that's at the bottom of every weekly navigator.